Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to another Net at Work quick tip video. Today we're going to be going over the Acumatica report designer and how we can take a existing report that's built into Acumatica. A lot of times there's probably just one additional field of piece of information and table you need to add to that report so you can easily compare and contrast with whatever your day-to-day tasks are. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a local install of Acumatica. The local install not only does put the Acumatica locally, but it also installs the report designer. And if you go to your start and head over to the programs, you can see here it says report designer right underneath our install. I just kept mine Acumatica ERP, just the default install on a local machine with the default data. The next thing you'll need is a report that you want to modify. In this case, we're going to use the sales order summary as an example. But before we dive into looking at how we can resize, add the field and table we want, I want to discuss the three different types of reports in Acumatica. So we have the normal screens, and then the first types of reports you'll see as we go through, like in the finance, we have financial statements, reports, and inquiries. Inquiries are the generic inquiries that we discussed in a previous video. The reports are the reports that we're going to be modifying today in the report designer. And then the financial statements, like the balance sheet, the P&L, uses report definitions, which are row sets and column sets. So if you go in here, you can see these are all the different reports using the report definitions module or tool in this case. And you can see here when you click on one, we have a row set, a column set, and some other miscellaneous different settings we can change. But for this video, we're going to stay with the reports, in this case, the sales order summary here. And all these three different reports kind of work their own way. They all have their own pros and cons depending on how you want to get the data out and how you want to dive into the data and go through that process. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to head over to the sales order summary. And then I want to just give you a quick example of what this report looks like and what we're going to be doing for this example of how to add a custom field to this report and how we can resize everything. So I'm just gonna, this demo data is from 2017, so I'm just going back in time so we can get some data in here. And you'll notice on the screen as this populates a bunch of different columns. It can seem a little overwhelming at first, but if you've ever had any experience with Crystal reports, you're gonna feel like you're at home. So the first thing we're gonna do here is we're going to take a look at one of these reference numbers here to see the different fields we have available. And just like with generic inquiries and reports in general, I always say to look at the data, kind of see how the information is on the screen, how it links. Can get a lot of information just from diving in of where it's located in Acumatica, and it makes life a lot easier when making these modifications. So looking at the screen, we're going to use our inspect element under our customization and the Control-Alt-Click, so we can then use that information of what tables we will possibly need to add, but really where the data is located on that table so we can call that column. So in this example, I think a great field that we could be adding that's not on here that some other clients of mine have asked for is the description field at the header level. So you can see that there's two different levels. Just to kind of recap, we have the sales order right here, and you can see that this is just the main order, and then we actually have the line part of this, which is below, and you can see it says SO lines, the sales order line table. So these are the two tables that we're going to be using, and to kind of add this data, in this case the description, we're going to head back over to this screen. And just to jump into how this screen works, if you've never had much experience with this, we have a pencil here to change back, go back to the parameters. We have a refresh, a PDF if you want to just jump into the PDF view, and you can even force this to show up in a PDF as well when it's opened. You can say sometimes it takes a couple seconds, but it loads. We can go back to the HTML view. You can see here we have groupings for USD and Europe. In this case, we have different page switchers, and you can see we have the go to the last and first page, print, send, and export Excel PDF. So we're going to hit back go back to the parameters. We're going to hit edit report. And one thing that's really important is if you don't see this on your machine, on your install or local install, you need to make sure you have the report designer activated in the users. So you go over to users. You can open us up in a new tab. And then you just select the typical user here. So we're going to go to admin in this case since it's a local install, and we're going to go down and you'll see there's a report designer role that you need to be selected to, added to. And if that's not added, you will not see this edit button. It will just be invisible. So we're going to hit the edit button. It's going to download the most recent version of this report. So we're just going to hit yes here. We're going to open this report, and you'll see a little window pop up. This will always pop up when you open a report that's an existing report, I think it's an RPX file, right, which you can see right here. And what you need to know about this screen is this is the local host, so this portion of the URL that you're using to tell the report designer where you're going to be heading. This is your login, and you can see here we have the user and then the company that we're logged into here, or the tenant in this case. We have the password, which is what you log in typically with, and the report. So if you wanted to just open a report and you didn't want to download it through this screen, I'd highly recommend it. It makes life super easy. You can just type in your URL, your login, your password, hit load report list, and I'm going to type in my password here and hit load report list, and you'll see that it'll give you a drop down of every single report that's in Acumatica that you can open with this tool. So in this case, we're going to use this report since we just kind of did the easy way, which is hitting edit report, having it download and opening it, and it will pre-fill a majority of the information besides the password. We're going to hit OK and open up the report. Now the report's open. I'm going to kind of cover, I guess, left to right of how the report designer is used. So like I was saying earlier, if you've had experience with crystal reports, you can see here that we have all the tables kind of shown up on the header. But going from top to bottom and then left to right, I want to kind of go over how this is broken down and then how we will edit this. So you can see up here we have a bunch of text boxes, and we have them under the header section 1. So the first thing to determine is the headers, the grouping, and kind of where the information is kept. So we can see here we have the header section 1 and then header section 2, and these are different headers in the actual report. So I'm going to have the report back up here so we can kind of jump between the two. And the first thing you'll see is the sales order summary, and it's under text. So every field that you click on here will change the right side properties. You don't have to right click anywhere, and you can click properties, but it will just switch this back over to the properties tab on the right side. Now we have different text boxes, and you can see that they're using this tool, this kind of, I guess, tool part of the program here. You can drag and drop, double click, and to modify these different text boxes, you can double click, or you can go over to the value here, and after you've done that, you can resize that. And with the program, you can resize using dragging and dropping and resizing the mouse, but I always suggest using shift and your arrow keys on your keyboard. Shift will resize, and if you click on the actual object you want to resize, you can hold shift and then right arrow, and you see it does it in kind of a chunk. And if you hold control on top of that and you right click, so shift and control, it will do micro steps. And then if you want to go back, you can hit the arrow back button, and you can see that every time you've clicked the right arrow, it will act as one of the steps to undo. The next thing you'll see here is we have some I guess you can say code or Acumatica language, and you can see here that it's whenever it has an equal, it's kind of like Excel. It's running a formula of some sort to gather information. So I always suggest if you see different things, different pieces of code or different auto generating fields in Acumatica and other reports, just go ahead and open those and then drag it, and you can bring it into here with copy and paste. So we have users up here. As we can see in the form, this is going to change depending on who is generating this report. We have a start and end date, and they're using the fields within the values. So you can see here that we have a command prompt that we've seen in the generic inquiry screen and other screens throughout Acumatica, and they have a bunch of different options here predefined to help you get a little bit closer to what the end goal is and put you in the right direction, like the equals in Excel. And you can see here that it has the date from underneath the date time, and they just grabbed one of these. The next thing you'll see here, we have a little bit of a, we can drag, resize these. So resizing these will actually resize how much space is on the report. The report builds in like segments, so when you drag this down, it will actually create a larger space between this top portion and the next section. And that's why they're divided in sections, because if these sections need to grow, it can grow automatically. Even though, technically speaking, we have a very thin line, the system is building, it's just loading that table one line at a time, and this is how much space you want from the top and the bottom of that section to populate every row that it's pulling, every time it's pulling that new piece of data and row in this case. So we can see here we have our type, and this refers to down here, making this a little bigger to make it easier, order type. We have reference number, and then you click down here, order number. We have order date, and then we have the SO order date. And these fields are just grabbed from that other screen where we were inspecting element just a minute ago. So for this type of modification, I want to add the description, and I want to put the description right after the customer's name. So to add the description field after the customer's name, we're going to need to make a little bit of space. So we're going to jump back into our order summary, kind of see how much additional space we have, and kind of good to go through the multiple pages here just to see how much space we have. So we can kind of see here that we have a little bit of space between the warehouse order quantity, open quantity, and line total. So we're going to squish these a little bit closer. So the first thing you want to do here, and it's really good just to jump back and forth between the two, is we're going to move open quantity over, order quantity over, and retail, and then squeeze it between the two. So we're going to leave open amount about the same here, or in this case, we can kind of see that it's always 0. And just to make things a little bit easier with space, we're going to remove the open quantity, and we'll replace that actually, and we're going to shift it over between the customer name, like I said. So the first thing you're going to want to do here is we're going to kind of make this a bit smaller. So we're going to click on the open quantity and this other field below that it refers to. We're going to hold the shift key, and we're going to use our arrow keys to resize by hitting the left arrow key here, or you can also drag as well. So we're going to shrink this down, and don't worry about the size if it shows up or not, because we'll touch on that in just a second. We're going to move it to the right, and then now we're going to highlight all these, highlight all of these below that it refers to, and we're going to hold Control and right arrow. And what this is going to do is not resize, but shimmy them over to the right slowly. And you can click and hold, and you can see every time it does a flash, it's actually doing another step in the undo process. So make sure that you are pretty confident, otherwise you're going to be clicking the back button a bit. So we're going to then grab these fields. We're going to move them all the way over to the left. And I like to use existing fields because it keeps it easy. They're all the same size. But if they were, say, the different height and you wanted to add a new field or text box in this situation, we can just use some of these tools up here, which I'll show you in just a second after we move everything. So we're going to grab this and grab this, move it over to the right. And you can see there I just tried moving them over without holding Control. It did a bigger jump. And what that does is it gets a little funky. The X's, don't be alarmed. They just mean that they're overlapping another one of these little boxes, and sometimes it does get a little finicky and shows that it's red when it's not. In this case, you can just spread them out more, make sure that they're showing up, and I'll show you how to test that as we go in just a second. So I'm just going to hold Control in this case, right arrow. Micro steps seem to always be the safe bet with this program to move things over evenly and correctly without running into errors. So now that we move those over, we're going to then copy the width, because I want to show you how these tools work up here, of warehouse to this open line. And we're going to change this also to description because that was the original goal here. So we're going to click the warehouse first. Don't hold anything. Just click to select only this object. Then we're going to select, with Shift being held, the object we want to copy, the original object. We're going to click that, and then we're going to use this make same width. And there's a bunch of different tools here. We have make same height, same size, make horizontal spacing equal. There's a lot of different cool little auto moving and configuring tools up here, so make sure you just highlight and click through all of them if you just want to experiment. They're pretty straightforward, like send to back, send to front for which one is going to be over, which column will be over the other. And we can do the same below, so we're going to click the one we originally want the width of, grab the next one, make the same width. And in this case, because it's a description, it's probably going to be longer. I'm just going to click both with Shift, hold Shift and Control, and then expand the column just so it's big enough. The next thing you'll see we have the option to do here. You'll notice that this is kind of pushed to the right. So we're going to Shift click both of them and now go into the properties. So this is going to be a formatting option that we're going to change. You can see here the text align was set to right, so we're going to set it to center here, and then you'll notice it shows up right over here that it's going to be center, but actually in this case we want it to be left because it is a description. It's going to be longer, so we're going to move it over to the left. Next thing you'll see here, we have the back image color, the border style. There's a lot of different things here. Typically you'll be in the font and changing the size of the text and then the actual font of the text and color, and that shows up under here under font. And you can see when you click over to the right, you have a little drop down to select your options here, and they will all this is how you can change the individual things and the values for this. And I'm not going to dive too deep because this is just how to modify an existing form and changing that up. Now that we have this set up correctly, we need to change it over to description. So we're going to double click here, type in description for the header, and then we need to grab the value of the table that's going to populate below. So we're going to go over to fields, and just like we originally looked at on the sales order here, the description is under the SO order description. So we're going to head over to that table here, go down to order description, and we're going to then go in and use, and you see that you can go into the field and drag and drop there, but we want to use the existing box here. So we're going to click on this one, go to value, we're going to remove this, and then we're just going to go to SO order and scroll down to order description here, double click, always validate to just make sure, and you'll notice there's no equal sign here, but don't worry, it auto adds it every single time. Now that that's showing up there, we can hit preview, and we can see here that we have description showing up right next to the customer name. Obviously sizing can be a little tricky, and you need to play around with it, but because this seems like we have enough space, and it may or may not overwrite and just kind of not show up the complete amount, it's no worries. We need a test that's really important, so we're going to save it to the server. And before I jump over to the saving to the server, you probably a quick jump in to show you kind of how these fields are added. If you go over to the build schema here, you can see we have our tables that we added, and you can load the schema from the server. These are all the tables like in the generic inquiry, and we'll cover this in a more intermediate class kind of training. We have relationships, which shows our parent-child tables, and our relationships below the specific linkings of the tables. From the actual table similarities, we have parameters, filters, sorting, and the parameters are what we saw originally, the options of what to choose from before we create the report. So we're going to go ahead and save this and upload it to the server. So we're going to hit File, Save to Server, and you'll notice here we have a Save as New Version. Make sure you go ahead and always check that. I think it's really important. I'll show you how to view the different versions. And I always like to type in, if we're making modifications, version 1. And something I didn't do this time, but I always suggest it, is when you open up a form like this, always go in and make sure that you save an initial version so you can always jump back. So if it comes it comes down to this situation where you're actually about to make a change and you want to have the initial version, just go back and open the one you just downloaded. So we can go actually hop back into our Chrome here, and I'm going to open this up in the downloads. You can see here we have show in folder. We can open this up real quick. You can open up a couple of them at the same time. It should be okay. We're going to open the exact same one. I'm going to then save to server. And because we didn't save it over the last one, everything's the same with the open amount. You can see it has no description. And we'll just type in initial version. Hit save. Then we can close this. And now we can save version 1. In the same report, just open it twice. Now that that is saved, we can then head over to our local session of Acumatica here. And once we double click on here and then go to order summary, you'll see that when we head over to the report versions, we have our version 1 and initial version that we just created. And you can actually cycle back. So every time you create a new version, it's saving to the local server or the server that version of the report. And you can download the individual reports here by right clicking and hit activate and edit, or just hitting the edit version here, and it'll download that version every single time. Let's go see our changes. So we're going to hit run report, and we're going to make sure that we have 2017 data selected just from this demo data here. And let's go over here, select, hit run report. And there you will see in just a couple seconds we have our description here. And it's the same exact description as coming from this screen as well. So we can see AR 4783, AR 4783, and we have consulting support, and it says consulting support. And you can see here that some of it got cut off. Don't sweat it. You can always just keep resizing here with those tools, the shift and the control. But this is how you can simply add just an additional field, no linkages. It's on the same report. The same table as when we were inspecting element, and how to make that modification, upload it to Acumatica. Thanks guys for tuning in to this Net at Work quick tip video. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or comment down below, and catch you in the next one.